Hi, I'm Ian Mitchell and I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and today we're going to be looking at sprint planning using Kanban. Traditionally in Scrum, during sprint planning, a team would forecast a sprint backlog of work, and they would have a sprint goal which would make that selection of work coherent. But in Scrum, a sprint goal can actually be any sort of coherence which would give the team a reason to work together. It might be, for example, that they would prefer to focus on flow, perhaps to improve their cycle times or throughput, or perhaps to get a better handle on work item aging so service level expectations can be improved. Now, to do that, to really be able to improve flow, a team will need to be able to navigate the sprint boundary a bit better. Rather than having the sprint boundary as a sharp cut-off point between work ending and then work beginning in the next sprint, work would need to flow across it. Yeah? One way of being able to do this is to replan the sprint backlog once the sprint goal has been met. Any time that then remains in the sprint time box can be used to get a head start on the work that the team think is likely to be asked of them in the next sprint. And product backlog refinement can help there. If the product backlog has been refined well, the chances of the team being asked to do something different would be minimized. Yeah? It would be quite likely that the work that the product owner asks them to do will in fact be the work that they started on in the last few days of the sprint. Now there's another possible trigger that can be used to improve flow across the sprint boundary. When work is reduced in the sprint backlog down to a certain level, that can itself be a trigger for replanning, for in effect replenishing the sprint backlog. And that sort of trigger would decouple the replenishment of the sprint backlog from not only the sprint boundary but also from the sprint goal itself. But if a team is really focused on improving its flow rate, on improving things like cycle time and throughput and so on, if that's what a team really cares about, then the sprint boundary will become less critical. They'll be much more interested in inspecting and adapting on a continuous basis. So sprint planning isn't quite the same thing as it used to be when teams start considering Kanban. There are new challenges for them. What's really the best way to be able to manage flow so the sprint boundary itself does not become an obstacle?